If you have a reasonable doubt, you should find the defendant not guilty. If you have no reasonable doubt, you should find the defendant guilty, imaginary or forced out.
The John Goodman DUI manslaughter trial is in the final stretch. That was Judge Jeffrey Colbath giving the jury final instructions after both the state and the defense rested their cases against the polo mogul who is accused of causing a deadly drunk driving crash. Good afternoon. I'm Keely Fulton. Lauren LaPonzina has the afternoon off.
And I'm Roxanne Stein, live outside the Palm Beach County Courthouse in West Palm Beach.
Roxanne has been at the courthouse all morning long since the proceedings began at around 8:15 this morning, and she joins us this noon for coverage of the testimony and analysis. Roxanne.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, as Keely mentioned, both sides have rested. The judge has given the jury instructions on the law, and they just broke for lunch, and they'll be back at 1:15 when closing arguments will begin. Before that, this morning, there were two final witnesses for the state. They were rebuttal witnesses called to the stand. One of them, a mechanical expert who was called to the stand to refute the testimony given by a defense mechanical expert who claimed that the Bentley that John Goodman was driving in February of 2010 malfunctioned.
Experts, they put in a lot of time and effort in analyzing a case, right?
Yeah, and frankly, that's why I was stunned that Mr. Serdar didn't do any testing. And he had been retained for 2 years, and I had a week, and I was able to get some done.
Malfunctioned, and you found it had malfunctioned. Would you have reported that it malfunctioned?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
So, as expected, that expert said the Bentley did not malfunction, or he would have reported it, disputing the defense witness who had been on the stand prior, saying that there had been 57, in fact, code errors reported in the Bentley John Goodman was driving the night of the accident when that Bentley plowed into Scott Wilson's Hyundai and flipped it into a canal, and Scott Wilson ultimately did drown in that canal. There was another witness on the stand, and that was a deputy for the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department who was out in Wellington and knows the roads in that area very well. He was called in to give a little bit of analysis on distances and speed bumps that are on certain roads in Wellington around John Goodman's home and the Players Club, where John Goodman did testify that he did stop in that night before leaving that scene to go to Wendy's, as he testified in court yesterday. So let's talk a little bit more about what's ahead throughout this afternoon with legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Michelle Suskauer. The judge, before the jurors broke for lunch, gave them their instructions on the law, but it was very complex.
It was.
And very detailed.
It was a half hour of instructions. And the jurors can take notes, but what's important to note is that because there's so much information and detail about what the state has to prove, the charges, the lesser offenses, the right to remain silent, the presumption of innocence, reasonable doubt, I could go on and on, the judge is actually giving the jurors a written copy of everything that was read to them that they could take back into the jury room so that they can rely on that.
Okay, as we mentioned, closing arguments are this afternoon. The state gives its closing, defense gives its closing, the state can come back. What does each side want to make clear to the jury one final time in their presentations?
Well, the state is dividing their closing argument. They're entitled to get what we call the sandwich, and they get to divide it into two. And they're, of course, going to try to relay to this jury that they have proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And they're going to probably appeal to this jury to use their common sense, that John Goodman's defense does not make sense. It defies reasonableness. It defies explanation, and that it didn't happen the way that Goodman's team is saying. Certainly, on the other hand, Goodman's team is going to be talking about the fact that this was a series of unfortunate events, really, one after another, and that no one came in to say that Goodman could possibly have drank as many drinks as the state is saying that he did, so those numbers are not reliable. That Troy Snellgrove, the main traffic homicide investigator's numbers, are not reliable, that he didn't calibrate the numbers properly, and that they brought in their own experts to completely refute what the state is saying, and certainly John Goodman and his own words. So there is a lot of information that the defense has to tie up together and to see whether the jury is going to believe that version of events.
Now, I'm looking at my watch because all of that starts in about an hour and 10 minutes. They come back into the courtroom at 1:15. Closing arguments are set to begin right away. Now, coming up at 12:30, we want to talk more with Michelle about the final hours of this trial, because that's indeed where we are right now. And also, I just got a late text message from one of our reporters upstairs in the courtroom and watching all the proceedings, saying that the judge may actually not have the jury begin deliberations today. So I want to talk to Michelle about that coming up at 12:30. So we've got a lot more to discuss about this trial, a lot of new information even into the final hours that we'll be getting to at 12:30 when we come back on News Channel 5 at noon. Reporting live from the courthouse in downtown West Palm Beach, I'm Roxanne Stein. Now back to you, Keely.